One. Okay, off and running. This is the Athlete's Edge. Happy to say it's episode 8, powered by PVL. Find us on social at Pure Vita Labs, and you shop online at pvl.com. Today's guest, actually a PVL affiliate. I'm very excited to get this guy on because he's in the upper echelon of his sport. Takes us into the world of mixed martial arts, more specifically professional Muay Thai, and the Canadian homegrown champion and Pan American gold medalist Scott Smash Mackenzie. Now, Scott, you have to tell us the name first. I mean, if that's not the coolest handle going, I don't know what is. Like, that must work well for you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's cool to be here.
You bet, buddy.
Yeah, so the nickname, actually, not a fight-related story.
Oh, no, okay.
My sister actually used to call me Smash when I was a kid, just because I was always breaking stuff.
So it precedes your fighting.
Yeah, definitely. And then it just kind of, like, once I was fighting and I didn't have a nickname, you started calling me Smash again, so I just ran with it. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that's actually in your handle. If anyone wants to look up Scott, it's at Scott Smash Mackenzie. Is it not on Instagram?
You bet.
Yeah, you bet. So, Scott, that's a famous Mike Tyson quote, but everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Is that true?
Yeah, it definitely
is. In a
way,
yeah.
Sometimes your plan changes a little bit when you get punched in the face, but.
Yeah. Meaning, I guess there's no bigger shock to the system. I mean, I'm sure there was a point, and obviously we're going to get into your history and things a little bit, but there was a point when, you had started training and things like that. But, that first time getting absolutely punched in the face is quite the thing, I imagine.
It's good, though. I think everybody should be punched in the face, full blast,
yeah.
at least once in your life. It makes you realize that you're not made of glass. You can get punched in the face, you can carry on. And I don't know, I think some people just could use a good punch in the face.
It would even the competition out, I think, a little bit, right? For everybody. If you knew the consequences were that you would get smashed in the face if you said something in this world, I think that would be very rewarding.
Yeah.
So, before we get into, I've asked this of all sort of our athletes and the guys that we've had on here, before we kind of get into your story and how you got started. How is and people will listen to this at different times, but how has the pandemic interrupted your sport? I mean, we've seen, obviously the bubble and hockey was put on hold, and, football, we're seeing no fans. For you, who's, propelled through your sport and where you're at now, what has that been like the last, since March for you, the last year?
Yeah, it's been super challenging. I mean, like, the sport has pretty much ground to a standstill in terms of competitions outside of a few countries that are still having events, a few organizations that are still having events. Like, I'm sure people have seen the UFC is doing the whole bubble thing, but
right.
At the local and national level, that's just that kind of infrastructure. So yeah, like, I was scheduled to fight April 11th and had to withdraw from that fight because I lost access to my gym. Gyms were closed. It was minus 12, 15 degrees outside and at the time. So it's not like you could even really train outside. And then actually that whole fight card ended up getting canceled anyways because it became illegal in Alberta to have gatherings of larger than 50 people at the time, and then it got even more restrictive from there. So
are you starting to see that lift now? Do you have a schedule for a competition? What's that look like now?
No, because as of today, we're kind of in that second wave, and they just released new restrictions. So actually, you're not allowed to have gatherings of more than 15 people. So if promotions can't sell tickets, if you can't butts in seats, you can't pay your fighters, you can't pay your doctor, you can't pay for the venue. So unless you have some crazy sponsor, which no one's going to do because all the companies are laying their staff off, then it's just not feasible to put on an event right now.
So obviously you have other endeavors. I believe we just talked. You own your gym. I think you're a trainer. You're a nutritionist as well. That sort of keeps your base. But I'm sure you're itching to get back into competitive fighting.
No, absolutely. Like, I love training. I love the process. I love the grind. It's my lifestyle. So I've kept training consistently this entire time. Like, I don't think I've taken any time off. I was, even when I was only training outside, I was still doing 2-a-days.
Okay,
And,
cool.
But, you know, like, not having something to train for is definitely difficult. Like, having an opponent in mind, having a date in mind is huge for motivation and huge for like your progression in the sport, you know?
Yeah, you kind of want to have that date circled on the calendar. I think everyone needs that sort of. It always helps when you have that goal at the end of the tunnel. So for those, obviously, the Athlete's Edge here, we cover a wide variety of, different sports and athletes. We've done bobsled, we've done, professional hockey, all kinds of things. Tell us the difference between, say, Muay Thai, kickboxing, regular kickboxing, and then some of the other, endeavors, karate, judo. What's the specifics around Muay Thai?
Yeah, you bet. So Muay Thai is actually
Muay Thai.
Like, it's the national sport of Thailand, and it evolved kind of as a battlefield martial art. So you basically take your limbs and you use them to replace your weapons. Say you drop your sword, now you use your elbow. So it's a very traditional but very functional martial art. There's no fat on it. Like, it's the leanest striking art there is. Everything has a purpose. There's nothing that's super showy. It's very violent, and at the highest levels, like, you'll see, like, it's a game of inches. Like, it's physical chess. Like, if you
Sure.
zig when you should zag, you got knocked out, or you got a big cut, or now you're fighting like injured. So it's definitely a tricky sport, and they call it the art of 8 limbs.
Okay.
You can punch, you can elbow, you can knee, and you can kick. So you have 8 things that you can strike with.
That's amazing. So, I mean, when you, obviously the biggest sort of spectacle that everyone would know for mixed martial arts is the UFC. How many of the UFC fighters that we would see would come from your discipline of Muay Thai?
A decent amount have transitioned from pure Muay Thai or kickboxing to MMA, but regardless whether they started there, every single one of those athletes is training Muay Thai. They're training their elbows, they're training their knees in the clinch, they're training their striking. Muay Thai incorporates a lot of aspects of Western style boxing too, so it's not like all those sports are compartmentalized. They're kind of blend together.
Yeah, so it's a blended fighting style, and then obviously grappling and things like that, once you hit the ground, would take on a different sort of life.
Like, even in my fight style, like, I take a little bit of Western boxing, maybe some Taekwondo. If it works, you try to put it into your style.
Right. So, going over your bio a little bit, and obviously, a culmination of a Pan American Championship in Argentina. I mean, that was the gold medal. I would assume it's the sort of the peak of your career, but you started in 2012, 2-time USA national champion. We've got 2015 IKF world champion, Western Canadian Championships, member of Team Canada, and then 2019 flawless record of 9-0 and capturing a title along the way. So this has been quite a journey for you, and we can kind of go in through that. But how does, we talked just before we started the podcast, and you're from Alberta, not a massive, I would say, battlefield for or impressions on that sport. How do you get involved, and what were the early influences for getting you there?
Yeah, I don't know. When I was going to university, I didn't really have like a competitive outlet anymore. I always played basketball and volleyball throughout high school. And then I remember I went to the University of Calgary, and I looked at their volleyball team practicing, and their setter, which is what I did, was about 1.5 feet taller than me. And he was left-handed like I am too. So I was like, there's no way I can do that sport. So thankfully, Muay Thai has weight classes, right? So it doesn't really matter if you're 6'11", you can succeed in that. And in Calgary, there's actually a pretty good Muay Thai scene, a pretty old Muay Thai scene. A number of people way back in the day went to Thailand and then brought it back.
Right.
Alberta, and they were doing pretty big shows here back in the day. Even like it was on that old show, TSN, Wide World of Sports.
Yeah, I remember. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just got into it from there, and then realized I was good at it. I've always been athletic, and I'm a pretty hard worker. So I think those two things kind of combined to help me see some early success, which just kept me going.
And at what point do you say, okay, hey, this is a pretty cool, hobby that you're doing, to saying, yeah, maybe I can use this as a, as full time and become a professional? Where does that start?
Well, yeah, I was always like competing, but it was always kind of around my work schedule. Like when I finished university, I was an environmental scientist. So I would go up north to these projects, and then I'd come back and my coach would be like, "You're fighting this weekend."
Right away.
Yeah, and then, so that's how it went for the first couple of years. But then over the course of my environmental science career, I kept fighting. And then I got laid off in the downturn, kind of 2015-ish. And that's when I shifted gears, really putting my focus on changing my career path to be a trainer, to be a nutrition coach, and then also really throw myself into my sport. And just, I could now make my schedule so I could train like a professional athlete. And from there, I just kept going up.
And so do you remember your first victory? Your very first win?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like the trajectory of most fight sports, like you always start with like these little like light contact tournaments kind of, and it's like basically like sparring with people who come from different gyms. And so you do those, and then you do what's called like a smoker fight. And these are like little amateur fights that don't go on your record.
Okay.
So I did a number of those, but then finally you get the chance to fight on an actual fight card, and you're usually like the first fight of the night because no one knows who you are.
Right, the undercard, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I remember my first fight was in a sportsplex in the neighborhood of Bowness in Calgary, which is kind of like a rough and tumble.
A little rough.
Yeah. And yeah, it was like one of the first fights of the night, and I don't even really remember the fight just because of how much adrenaline I had.
Yeah.
Like it was just a kind of a blur, and then I ended up actually kicking the guy in the face and won by knockout. And I remember just like being like super wide-eyed, like, I just won that fight.
Is it, it's one of these things, it's not like, almost any given Sunday. Is it really, two guys get in the ring, no matter how much there's still a chance someone connects, you can walk into one and get knocked out. It doesn't matter how good or trained you are, right? It's one of those things.
Yeah, especially at my weight class. Like I fight at super middleweight, which is 165 pounds. So people are athletic, they're fast, and everybody can hit hard. So like I've only ever been stopped once in my career, and it was exactly that. I was, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. He might say differently.
I was whooping this guy, and I let my guard down for 1 second, and he got me. So with one strike, that's all it takes sometimes.
What would you say is your most challenging fight? Like the one that was your biggest, okay, this guy is pretty heavy duty, and either a victory or a loss, but who's the toughest guy you ever fought, you think?
Definitely my professional debut. I fought, I was main event in Vegas.
Wow.
Pretty big card. And I fought a guy who would be considered a legend in the game.
Is that right?
He's a Thai who lives in California, and he's got about 300 some fights, 330 fights. And that was my first pro fight. So that was super challenging. Like it was like playing chess when you're like a pretty good like national level fighter against a chess player against a grandmaster. Like he knew my moves.
You knew your moves.
Yeah. It was challenging. It was a good scrap, and I learned a ton from it. So
yeah, you learned a ton. Talk about the mindset it takes. I've read, obviously coaching along the way, it's huge, and you probably learned from some amazing coaches, but what's the mindset difference that you see that you kind of have to have at the top level?
You just have to be super driven. There's no way in a sport that's this painful,
Yeah.
that comes with this many injuries, that is this challenging and physically demanding. You have to be super driven. Even though you have like a team and a coach and whatever, like nothing's going to work unless you do. Like you got to get in the gym and you have to do the thing that's hard every day, like again and again and again for years. So that's the only way that you get to be like a national champion, a professional champion.
Yeah, and there's more consequence, right, in your sport, because if you get beat, you can get beat up pretty bad, right?
Yeah, it's not like losing a basketball match or
Right.
or like losing in bobsleigh where you're like, rats, we'll get them on the next circuit or something, or we'll get them next weekend. It's like, no, if you lose, you probably get your ass kicked. So
I see that, obviously you've been able to do, it's kind of one of the benefits of being what you've done, but you've been able to travel a lot to compete.
Yeah.
And then what's it like going to places like Thailand or Japan where the sport is just at another level? Did you feel like an outsider? Did you feel like you fit in? Was it, an amazing atmosphere?
Yeah, being able to travel has been such a bonus of this sport. I've got to see some really cool places. But I would say, like, I don't think I felt like an outsider when I was in those countries, but you realize that the way we see the sport is a lot different than the way Thais see the sport. It's more like a job to them, kind of. Like,
Really, huh?
Yeah, because a lot of Thais, what they'll do is they'll send their kid to a boxing camp. Like if you're a farm family from up north, maybe your son is talented on the local circuit, you send him to the gym in Bangkok, and then when he wins fights, he sends money back home to his family. So it's more like a job, and they take it a little more lightly, and they take it like less seriously.
Okay,
it's less life or death than it is for us. And so going there actually helped my approach to fighting, because it made me kind of chill out and enjoy the process a little bit more. And it doesn't always have to be like super serious grind time,
You can stop and smell the roses, a little bit too. I think that happens too. You look at your sort of your career and your report card, like you've done so many things. It's like, wow, it is nice to sort of sit back and say, geez, I have really accomplished a lot, and a lot of memories in there.
Or when you're in like some cool country, like I know some fighters who've traveled to countries and like they didn't even leave the hotel room. They're like, they didn't experience it. And so when I travel, I really try to smell the roses and be like, wow, I'm in Minsk, Belarus right now. Like, when am I ever going to get to come back here? So I really appreciate it, and I don't take it for granted that I've got to see some really cool places in the world.
Yeah, I mean, geez, especially now when everyone's world has gotten so small, right? Living out of your house, and you appreciate all those things. So let's, obviously, you work with us at PVL, and we're happy to, sponsor you in that way. And it always lends itself, obviously, to talking about your, to training and nutrition specific to your sport. I always find it fascinating. Sometimes you can kind of look at somebody, oh, they're a football player, they're a basketball, like just by the build of their body. So tell us specifically about the physical demands of your sport, a little bit maybe of a common day of training for you, and then, let's get into sort of nutrition and supplements.
Yeah, I would say like the physical demands of Muay Thai are quite diverse. Like you have to be a really well-rounded athlete. Like it's almost like a rugby type athlete where you have to be simultaneously really well conditioned, fast and explosive, strong. You have to have some armor on you. Like you have to have some muscle and be resilient. And I've always kind of looked at my training like I want to be as strong as I can for my weight. So that's not always easy to do, right? Because a lot of people associate weight with strength, but it's not always. Yeah, so it's all about relative strength. You don't want to get too big because then you can't make your weight class and you maybe be slower, right? So there's kind of a trade-off. But I always have figured, and I've felt this in fights before, if I'm equal in skill to my opponent, but I'm stronger, I'm going to smash them, Yeah, for sure. Does it go through that same, boxers will go through a weigh-in and then in the next 24 hours gain like 12 pounds? Does that happen also? Yeah. And I've mastered that over the years.
Wow.
I'm able to dip down briefly to 165 pounds, and then the next day I'm right back up. I'm refueled. I'm ready to go.
So what's that, explain that sort of 48-hour process to getting down to weight? I mean, is it, zero carbs and water, and then how about getting back up quick in the next 12?
Yeah, you bet. So I'll try to make this as quick as possible.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating for people that are, about nutrition.
So the main science behind it now is you actually take a week. So if I'm fighting on Saturday, on Sunday or Monday, I'll stop eating. So your weigh-in will be on Friday, a day before. So from Sunday or Monday to Friday, no vegetables. And then what that does is it eliminates the fiber that's in your gut. So just by doing that, you can maybe gain or lose 3 or 4 pounds.
Okay.
And then another thing is you basically adopt the keto diet. So you eat no carbohydrates, but you still keep eating a lot of fats and protein. So you're not starving yourself. You're still able to train. You still feel good. And that is another 3 or 4 pounds. Especially me, I have some lot of lean muscle. So that muscle glycogen, the liver glycogen, it's gone. So that trims you down there. And then throughout the week as well, you're drinking a lot of water, which you slowly start to taper down. And then kind of the day before weigh-ins is just sipping water. And what that does is it makes you a little bit leaner as well. Like it flushes stuff out, but it also increases the rate that your body eliminates water. So once you start just sipping, you keep peeing, it's crazy. So you actually passively lose a bunch of weight. So just fiber, glycogen, and water, you're already at like 10 pounds right there.
Sounds like a bodybuilding competition. It's not much different for these guys.
You wake up the morning of your weigh-in, you maybe hop in the bath and sweat 2 pounds, and then you're on weight. And then after the weigh-ins, it's all about replenishment. So big time with the electrolytes and the glycogen. So lots of liquid, lots of electrolytes, lots of Game Aid.
Yeah, I bet you that was a good one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then total reload as well. Just drive that glycogen back into the muscles and the liver. And then you start eating solid food, of course, after that.
And you feel like $1 million, right?
Yeah, man.
It's like
literally feel like you could run through a wall. It's crazy. You can see it hit you too. You get like super vascular and like turn into the Hulk.
Yeah, that's when you want to do your photo shoots, right? When you when you blast up back on the carbohydrate. So what about a regular? So get into your regular training day. I mean, again, I assume it changes before fights, and you have to watch out for injuries and things like that. But what would a week look like, say, for you training?
Yeah, so typically, like in what I'd call like fight camp, which is the period of time you ramp up your training before a fight. And I usually like to do that 8 to 10 weeks.
Okay.
I would train 6 days a week. Usually Muay Thai is the evening session for 6 of those days or 5 of those days. And then the morning session is a mix of Muay Thai or strength and conditioning or just pure conditioning. So I'm training, what is that? Yeah, 12 to 13 times a week.
Crazy, yeah.
Some of the sessions are kind of short though. Like some of my like sprint work sessions aren't like super long, but some of the Muay Thai sessions are quite long. Like it can be 2.5 hours. I
was going to say, how much of it is outside of the actual craft? I mean, running, weights, they all play a role. Resistance training.
Yeah, I try to do like 2 to 3 conditioning specific workouts a week that are outside Muay Thai, just to give my body a little bit of a break from the repetitive nature of the sport. But I do try to do quite a lot of conditioning that is specific to Muay Thai, just because I've always thought a bit about it like, what am I going to get more bang for my buck from in terms of my sports performance? Practicing my sport for 20 minutes or going for a run for 20 minutes?
Isn't it amazing? It's very true that, you can, you might be a runner, for instance, and you can run like the wind forever and think that your endurance is at a certain level, and then go and do something else that's sort of unrelated and uses different muscles, and you're completely exhausted when you think that you're at a threshold when like, man, I should be able to do this. I can run forever, but it doesn't always translate to endurance in the same way.
And like everybody's all about sports specific training now, and they're trying to
right.
all these exercises and stuff. But I'm like, there's nothing more specific than doing the sport itself. You know?
Doing the sport. And I imagine it's a crazy amount of stretching and that type of thing.
Yeah, I do. Well. I take my, like, especially as I get older and I've had lots of injuries, I take my dynamic mobility and my warm up and my cool down quite seriously, and I do lots of mobility drills and physio exercises, prehab and rehab.
Yeah. So what is I guess it's sort of now a wait and see for you in terms of your next competitions. You know, you're assuming, geez, I hope this time next year that we're back at it. But what, you know, where do you set your goals now, say for your 5-year plan? Does that, do you continue competing? Do you want to build your gym and your training? How does that all look for Scott Mackenzie?
Yeah, I'd say I definitely have like probably 3 or so more years in the sport. And now that I'm like kind of fighting professionally, I'm ranked in the world rankings. I want to just keep going with that. I'd love to be able to defend my super middleweight title that I have, and take on maybe some international competition as well. But seriously, it's just, you can say what you want to do, but we got to get things moving again before it's a reality, unfortunately. So you never know too. I might head to Thailand if they open up before.
Right.
And, because I know I can get fights there. I could fight there 2 times a month if I wanted to.
I imagine they have just that many more cards, right? There's that much more demand for the sport, sort of a thirst for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, Scott, this has been a lot of fun. You know, we have people look you up for sure in Calgary. You can give maybe a shout out to your gym and some of your staff if you'd like.
So my gym is Fight Fit YYC. And I do personal training, nutrition coaching, all that kind of stuff. If you want to train strength and conditioning or Muay Thai or boxing with me, just give me a shout. And then I also train at a gym called Dunamis Martial Arts if you're more interested in group classes. It's owned by a great couple, really good fight team, really good community. So check them out as well if you're in the Calgary area.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Course, thanks to PVL.
Yeah, no, it's great. You know, having you know, we really appreciate having, you know, credible athletes like yourself. Obviously, the things that you've done and you know, achievements are off the charts. So we're really happy to have you along for the ride too. Everybody can find Scott at Scott Smash Mackenzie, childhood nickname, not from fighting, as we learned today. And we'll continue to stay in touch, and we wish you all the best, Scott. We appreciate it. And in the meantime, be safe and keep well from your friends at PVL. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
See you later.